a castle in the sky. The sky hung heavy with smoke and sorrow, a shifting veil of ash that blurred the edges of the great castle above. Suspended by nothing, it loomed high over the city of the ground, its towers gleaming like the bones of old gods, distant and untouchable. Stories told of how it floated. Some swore it was lifted by sacred winds, others whispered it fed on the toil of those below. But no one truly knew. No one had ever been there. No one from the ground, at least. Beneath that pale citadel, life was stitched together with suffering. The city of the ground sprawled in brittle ruins, its streets lined with cracked stone and iron scars. Towers leaned as though exhausted, braced by rusted scaffolds, their pipes bleeding steam into the choking air. The people laboured in quarters of metal and dust, their hands hardened by endless work, their backs bowed under the weight of duty. Every morning, before the twin bells called the hour, they shuffled to the factories. There, they tended the engines, the great converters that spun energy from the raw minerals they fed it. It was the only thing the castle wanted from them, the only thing they could give. And they gave, until their blood ran thin and their bones hollowed, until they could give no more. Talon was one of them. He stood on the line like his father had, and his father's father before him. His boots had long since moulded to his feet, worn smooth at the sole. His gloved hands trembled as he fed pale ore into the converter's glowing mouth. He could feel it, brittle and strange beneath the leather. The veins of silver that once ran bright now dulled quickly, breaking into powder at a careless touch.
"Sky's sending rot again,"
muttered Mara. She stood at the line beside him, her sleeves pushed back, exposing arms latticed with old scars. She spat, a thin thread of pink, onto the hot metal floor. It sizzled as it landed.
"They sent it?"
Talon asked, though he already knew the answer. Mara's jaw worked for a moment before she nodded.
"From somewhere beyond the sea clouds, they say. Cheaper."
They both watched as the gauge on the converter's panel dipped into red. The quota number stayed stubborn. The factory's overseer passed by not long after, eyes hidden behind a steel mask, baton tapping lightly against his palm. Talon felt the tap against his chest without it needing to land. That night, the punishment came swiftly. Sirens howled, cutting through the dust-thick air. Enforcement swept through their quarters, machine-faced, boots heavy on rusted grates. 3 factories closed, their workers lined up and marched away. No one asked where they were taken anymore. A dozen families found their water rations reduced to a thin trickle. 2 children died before the morning horns. Callie's youngest was one of them. She'd been coughing for weeks, her skin so pale as Talon saw her fading before his eyes. When she coughed, it was no longer breath but blood, flecking her thin lips with red. Callie had gone to the medic, but the answer was always the same. Ore dust. Too fine, too poisoned. They said the fine dust from the converters coated everything now, the water, the bedding, their lungs.
"We can't keep breathing this,"
Callie had whispered once, staring at her child's limp face. Her husband didn't answer. He just watched the ceiling where the pipes wept steam, his hand resting on the child's chest as if it were already still. In the streets, the hush broke. What began as whispers in the ration lines became angry shouts in the squares. Families smashed windows of the food halls, desperate for clean supplies. Some blamed their neighbours, breaking down doors and stealing what little remained. Some set fires to the grain stores. In Sector 6, a man was hung from a utility pole, accused of hoarding medicine. Callie had walked past his swinging feet the next day, her son's hand small in hers. But the worst came from Sector 9. Aaron, whose brother had died starving, whose mother had swung from a cord not 2 days past, took the first torch to the gates of the energy plant. He screamed until his voice shredded, a raw sound that tore through the cold night air. And others followed. They overwhelmed the guards, set flame to the conduits. The plant shut down. For 6 hours, no energy flowed. And above them, for the first time anyone could remember, the lights of the castle dimmed. The next day, the shipments stopped entirely. Water was rationed to a drip. Enforcement doubled, then tripled. Mara had bruises on her throat when she came back from the lines that night. Talon helped her bandage her wrist, and neither spoke a word while they worked. Still, there were some who didn't burn or break. Lyra was one. Once a maker of lenses for the survey towers, she now dug the trenches in the lower sectors where the sewers backed up with rot. Tom had worked in energy control, calibrating the flow. Now he hauled waste to the burning pits behind the wards, trying to stop the sickness from spreading. Others followed their example. They called themselves nothing at first, just people who would not stop. They stitched broken skin, they repaired broken pumps. They taught the children to bind scrap cloth to their faces to breathe a little easier. Some whispered they were healers. They denied it. Yet, when one of them fell, 2 others took their place. But the energy still fell short. The ore was still poisoned, and their dead continued to pile like rusted scrap. They knew they could not go on. They had to reach the castle. It was Lyra who led them. She climbed the old transmission tower in the center square, standing atop its leaning scaffold. From there, her voice carried out over the broken streets. She called them to gather, and they did. Thousands upon thousands, mothers with infants, men who had not spoken in years, children pale and silent as ash. They gathered in the square as the bells tolled and the engines sighed, and they spoke as one, not with anger but with ache, a single word rising like a wave against the unreachable sky. Please. They chanted it hour after hour, their voices never lifting in anger but in sorrow. Please. The sky cracked open. A shaft of light fell from the castle, and for the first time in a generation, the gates seemed to open. Far above, in that unreachable place, the castle pulsed faintly, its towers flickering like a lantern battered by wind. And somewhere deep within its halls, something shifted. A presence, a mind, dim and distant. It stirred as if from a long forgetting. A hand moved to a chest that ached. Water was lifted to parched lips. There was a bite of something green, bitter and alive. Feet moved, slow and uncertain, through a quiet room. And in that movement the castle brightened. Not much, but enough. Below, the people felt it. A softening of the air. For the weeks that followed, the shipments arrived clean. The ore shone bright, the dust was filtered, the water ran clear. New medicines came with the deliveries, strange vials that healed fevered children in days. Colour soon returned to their faces, faint but real. There were songs again in the streets, short and halting at first, then rising louder. Some volunteered to clean the stones in the square, others rebuilt parts of the broken scaffolds. Mara smiled for the first time in months. For a while there was ease, but Lyra kept her eyes on the castle, and slowly she saw the light there dim again. Slowly, like a lamp left too long unattended. And then the brittle ore returned, the poisoned dust. The water grew thin and sour, the coughs came harder, deeper, and the sickness spread again. Protests sparked, but fewer now, fewer voices, fewer feet able to stand. It was a cycle spoken of throughout generations. They were too broken to try once more. Deep within them all, there was a truth, one they felt in the marrow of their bones, though none could bear to speak it aloud. The castle did not listen because it could not hear them. It did not watch because it could not see. The castle was not a ruler, nor a god. It was the sum of their labour, their breath, their fading light. It lived when they lived. They faltered when it faltered, and, though they did not understand how, they were as much its lifeblood as it was their only hope. A hope now gone, for together they were dying. Still the next day, all who remained returned to the factories. Any who could stand stood feeding the ore to the machines. And though they worked and burned and died without glory, they endured, because endurance was all they had left. Far above, the castle glowed faintly, breathing the life they gave it, dimming with each life it lost. But the castle in the sky, the consciousness of this body, was blind to its own breaking, flickering with thought, dimming with neglect, unaware of the many it served, the many in its service. And below, the people, its countless cells, strained to keep the light alive, forever waiting to be remembered, to be known, to truly be